How humans discovered and used fire without giving step-by-step instructions for starting a fire. How did humans make fire before lighters? Imagine living thousands of years ago. There are no matches, no lighters, no gas stoves, no electric switches. Night arrives, temperatures drop, and darkness covers everything. Yet somehow, ancient humans learned one of the most important skills in human history: how to control fire. But how did they make fire before modern technology? And perhaps even more interestingly, how did humans discover fire in the first place? For early humans, fire wasn't just something useful, it changed the way they lived. It provided warmth, helped with food preparation, offered protection, and eventually central to communities and daily life. But creating fire was not always easy. Long before the lighter was invented, people had to understand something that seems obvious to us today. Fire needs the right conditions to exist and continue burning. Ancient people could observe naturally occurring fires caused by things such as lightning and volcanic activity. A lightning strike could ignite vegetation, creating a natural source of flames. Early humans may have learned to preserve these naturally occurring fires rather than create new ones every time. Keeping a fire alive could therefore be extremely valuable. Imagine finding a burning branch after a natural fire. Instead of allowing the flame to disappear, people could carefully maintain the burning material and use it as a source of heat and light. Over generations, humans became increasingly skilled at controlling fire, but eventually they needed ways to create it themselves. One major discovery involved friction. Ancient cultures in different parts of the world developed techniques based on the idea that movement between certain materials could produce enough heat to create an ignition source. The basic scientific principle is surprisingly simple. When surfaces move against each other, energy is converted into heat. If enough heat accumulates in a suitable material, it can begin to glow or smolder. From there, carefully controlled conditions can allow a flame to develop. But ancient fire making wasn't simply a matter of rubbing two random pieces of wood together. Different environments provided different materials, and different cultures developed their own technologies. Some traditional systems used wooden components. Others used specially prepared materials designed to catch and hold an ignition source. These techniques required practice, patience, and an understanding of local materials. Another major technology involved striking certain hardened, hard materials together. This is where the history of fire becomes especially fascinating. People discovered that particular materials could produce hot sparks when struck appropriately against harder surfaces. Those sparks could potentially ignite a prepared material. Over time, this became an important technology in many societies. Later, people developed dedicated tools for producing sparks more reliably. One famous example involved a mineral commonly known as flint. Flint became valuable because it could produce sparks when struck against suitable materials. But there was another important part of the process. The spark alone wasn't enough. The spark had to reach material capable of catching that tiny amount of heat. This meant ancient firemaking was really a combination of several discoveries: heat, sparks, combustible materials, air, and careful control. Understanding these elements transformed fire from something found in nature into something humans could increasingly control. Then came another fascinating technology: the fire drill. Archaeological and ethnographic evidence shows that different cultures developed rotating wooden fire-making systems. The underlying concept was friction. A rotating component and another material interacted in a controlled way, generating heat. The technology could vary significantly from culture to culture. Some systems were simple, others became surprisingly sophisticated, and this tells us something important about ancient humans. They weren't simply surviving by luck. They were observing nature, testing ideas, remembering what worked, and passing knowledge from one generation to another. Fire-making knowledge became cultural knowledge. Parents taught children. Communities preserved techniques. Experienced people became valuable because they understood materials, weather, seasons, and the behavior of fire. Fire also changed something fundamental: food. Cooking transformed the human relationship with food. Heating food could make some foods easier to process and consume. It also created opportunities for humans to use fire as part of increasingly complex food preparation. But fire wasn't only about eating. It transformed social life. Before fire, darkness placed severe limits on activity. After humans learned to control fire, evenings could become periods of gathering. People could sit together around a fire. They could communicate, share stories, teach younger generations, plan, work, and strengthen social relationships. In a way, fire became one of humanity's earliest forms of technology, and it wasn't just useful indoors. Fire could provide warmth in cold environments. It could provide light. It could help people work with materials, and it could make certain landscapes easier to inhabit. Eventually, humans developed increasingly advanced methods for producing heat and flames. Ancient metalworkers learned to create extremely high temperatures. Civilizations developed furnaces. Later came chemical ignition systems. Then came matches. And eventually, the modern lighter. The lighter we recognize today is the result of centuries of experimentation with combustion, metals, fuels, and mechanical mechanisms. Compared with ancient fire-making methods, modern lighters are incredibly convenient. A tiny movement can produce a flame almost instantly. But that convenience hides an extraordinary history, because the lighter is not where the story of fire begins. The story begins much earlier. It begins with humans watching lightning strike the ground, watching branches burn, watching glowing embers survive after flames disappear, and asking a revolutionary question: can we control this? That question changed civilization, from natural fires to friction-based technologies, from sparks to furnaces, from ancient fire tools to matches, and eventually to the pocket lighter. Humanity spent thousands of years turning fire from a mysterious natural phenomenon into a controllable technology. And perhaps the most impressive part isn't the flame itself, it's the knowledge behind it. Ancient humans had no modern laboratories, no thermometers, no engineering textbooks, no internet, yet they learned through observation, experimentation, memory, and cooperation. Every successful attempt taught them something. Every failure taught them something else. Over generations, those tiny discoveries accumulated. And eventually, humans didn't just survive around fire. They built civilizations around technologies that depended on controlled heat. So the next time you see someone casually flick a lighter and produce a flame, remember this: that tiny flame represents thousands of years of human innovation. Before the lighter, before the match, before modern tools, there were people sitting in ancient darkness, watching the natural world and trying to understand one of its most powerful forces.